Now, we will talk about section 403 of the IPC. It says, whoever dishonestly misappropriates or converts to his own use any movable property shall be punished with imprisonment of either description of a term, which may extend to 2 years, or with fine, or with both. Now, there are illustrations of it. Now, before coming to the illustrations, you should first understand that what are the keywords under section 403. First is dishonestly. You understand to what would you relate this word with. Then there is misappropriates. Then it is converts to his own use, and then there is movable property. So you should understand that 403 will only apply in the cases where there is a movable property involved, and that movable property has been either converted to the use of the accused or misappropriated by the accused with dishonest intention. Now you must understand that it is a very peculiar feature of section 403 that at the first time when the accused gets hold of the property, that holding of the property is innocent. It is not coupled with any intention. Now, after holding that property, if the accused decides to misappropriate or converts to his own use, alright, then in that situation, the crime can be said to be criminal misappropriation. The illustrations will make it further clear, but you need to mark a very sharp distinction between theft and criminal misappropriation. That under theft, the very moving of property is with dishonest intention, while under criminal misappropriation, the moving of property is not with dishonest intention, but it is after getting hold of the property the accused makes a dishonest intention, and if he were to, acting under that dishonest intention, misappropriates such property or converts to his own use, against causing detriment to the lawful owner, then it would amount to criminal misappropriation. The first illustration will make this point clear. First illustration reads, A takes the property belonging to Z out of Z's possession, in good faith, believing at the time when he takes it that the property belongs to himself. A is not guilty of theft, but if after discovering his mistake, dishonestly appropriates the property to his own use, he is guilty of the offense under this section. So this illustration is making things clear that had A taken the property out of Z's possession with a dishonest intention at the first instance, it would have been theft. But since he took the property of Z due to a mistake, then that is not theft. But if after discovering his mistake, he decides that I will appropriate the property for my own use dishonestly, then that would amount to what? Criminal misappropriation. Similarly, we come to illustration B. It says that A, being on friendly terms with Z, goes into Z's library in Z's absence and takes away the book without Z's implied consent to take the book for the purpose of reading it. A has not committed theft, but if afterwards A sells the book for his own benefit, then he is guilty of offense under this section. Now comes the illustration C. A and B being joint owners of a horse, A takes the horse out of B's possession. Alright, A takes the horse out of B's possession, intending to use it. Here A has a right to use the horse because he's the co-owner, he's a joint owner, that is why he has the right to use the horse. And because of that, he's not acting dishonestly, and hence he's not dishonestly misappropriating it. But if A sells the horse and appropriates the whole proceed to his own use, then he is guilty of offense under section 403. So mere using the property by the joint owner or by a co-partner or a partner doesn't make him liable under 403. It is only when all of the parameters are satisfied, only then can a partner, joint owner or a co-partner can be liable for criminal misappropriation. Know this, that it is the toughest to score a conviction in case you want to prosecute a partner for criminal misappropriation where the assets has not been liquidated yet. Alright, because the partner has an instance of joint ownership with the other partners. Now explanation 1. Explanation 1 reads that a dishonest misappropriation for a time only is a misappropriation within the meaning of this section. Alright. It means temporary dishonest misappropriation is punishable अंडर 403. अगर वो शॉर्ट पीरियड के लिए भी है तब भी पनिशेबल है. सो लाइक थेफ्ट इन दिस केस ऑल्सो the misappropriation need not be permanent. It is sufficient if it is for a temporary period of time. So let us read what the illustration has to say. Illustration says that A finds a government promissory note belonging to Z bearing a blank endorsement. A, knowing that the note belongs to Z, pledges it with the banker as a security for a loan, intending at a future time to restore it to Z. A has committed an offense in this section. So you need to focus on one thing, that A knows that first of all the note belongs to Z, and also that he intends at a future time to restore it to Z. Alright, so he believes that I will temporarily make use of this note and later I would restore the amount to Z and restore the note to Z. So in this situation, what is the time period for which the dishonest misappropriation or the criminal misappropriation lies? In this case also, the criminal misappropriation is for a temporary period, and the illustration itself is telling you that even the misappropriation for a temporary period would make a person liable under 403 of the IPC. Then we look at the explanation 2. It says that a person who finds the property which is not in possession of any other person and takes such property for the purpose of protecting it for or for restoring it to the owner does not take or misappropriate it dishonestly and is not guilty of an offense, but is guilty of the offense above defined if he appropriates it to his own use when he knows or has the means of discovering the owner, or before he has used reasonable means to discover and give notice to the owner and has kept the property a reasonable time to enable the owner to claim it. So the explanation 2 is very clear, that it is not the act of retention simpliciter that makes a person liable. Alright, now merely because a person has kept the property doesn't make him liable for criminal misappropriation. It could be that he has kept or retained the property in order to find out the true owner. So the explanation 2 is saying that those who retain the property or keep it with themselves in order to find the true owner and in order to restore the property to the true owner, that is not a case of criminal misappropriation. But let us suppose that he retains the property but he never tries to find out the real owner, or doesn't employ the reasonable means to discover the real owner or give notice to the owner, or does not afford a reasonable time in order so that a true owner may claim it. So in that situation also, this would amount to criminal appropriation. Alright, so you need to make a difference between mere retention for finding the true owner and giving reasonable time for true owner to claim the property, and you need to make a difference between those who do not employ the means to find the true owner or in order to discover the true owner or give a reasonable time so that true owner may claim the property. Alright, you need to make the distinction between both of them. So in a case where a person is retaining the property for the purpose of restoring it to the true owner or affords it reasonable time, then he won't be guilty of that offense. But a person who does not try to find the owner, does not give reasonable time, then in that situation he would be guilty of criminal misappropriation. Now the question comes that what is reasonable time? The answer is that reasonable time is a question of fact and it is decided on the fact and circumstances of each case. There is not a cut and right formula for it. Alright. Now there is one more important aspect that you need to focus on, that it is not necessary that the finder should know who is the owner of the property or that the particular person is the owner of it. It is sufficient if at the time of appropriating it he does not believe it to be his own property, or in good faith believes that real owner cannot be found. For this purpose, you need to mark these words that it is sufficient if he does not believe it to be his own property. These are the key words. Or in good faith believes that the real owner cannot be found. Illustrations will make these things clear. Illustration A says that A finds rupee on a high road, not knowing to whom the rupee belongs. A picks up the rupee. Here, A has not committed the offense described under this section. Alright. Because he has found the rupee on a high road. Everybody goes here and there from the high road. Then how will he make out that to whom does the rupee belong? In this situation, if he keeps the rupee, then he is not liable for criminal misappropriation, because that amounts to retention simply. It is not with dishonest intention that he is misappropriated it. Then come illustration B. A finds a letter on the road containing a banknote. From the direction and the contents of the letter, he learns to whom the note belongs. He appropriates the note. He is guilty of an offense under this section. Now, the illustration B is making A liable because of what reason? Because the banknote contains the name of the true owner. Alright. Banknote contains the name of the true owner. So here A has had an opportunity that he may find the true owner and return his banknote, yet he chose not to do so. So what would be the case in this situation? He would be liable for criminal misappropriation. While in the illustration A, he in good faith believed that the real owner cannot be found because it was on the high road. He in good faith believed that the real owner cannot be found. That is why in illustration A was not liable. But in the illustration B, the banknote itself had the name of the true owner. He never made any attempt to reach out to the true owner. Then he would be liable for criminal misappropriation. Now we come to illustration C. It says A finds a check payable to the bearer. He can form no conjecture as to person who lost the check, but the name of the person who has drawn the check appears. A knows that this person can direct him to the person in whose favor the check was drawn. A appropriates the check without attempting to discover the owner. Then again, he is guilty of an offense under this section. Alright. After that, we come to illustration D. It says A sees Z drop his purse with money in it. A picks up the purse with the intention of restoring it to Z, but afterwards appropriate it for his own use. A has committed an offense defined in this section. You should remember that dishonest misappropriation for a time only is sufficient for the section to apply. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे illustration D में Z initially had the intention of restoring money. A initially had the intention of restoring money to Z. But when he actually took the purse, he saw that okay, I'll return him later. But first I need to just do my work, and after that I'll return him money. So here also A would be liable. A would be liable because initially he had a very innocent intention. But since afterwards he appropriated the money to his own use, which was contained in the purse, he would be liable for section 403 because that was a dishonest thing that he did. Then we come to illustration E. A finds a purse with money, not knowing to whom it belongs. He afterward discovers that it belongs to Z, and he appropriates it to his own use. A is guilty of an offense under this section. Similarly, for the same reason, at first he tries to find the true owner, but when he actually finds the true owner, he doesn't want to give him the money. He rather keeps it himself. The accused person keeps the money with himself. So in this situation, what happens? A again becomes liable. Then we come to the illustration F. A finds a valuable ring, not knowing to whom it belongs. A sells it immediately without attempting to discover the owner. Then again, A is guilty for an offense under this section. Because when you look at the explanation 2, you will find out that since in this illustration A has not given the reasonable time or has not tried to make reasonable means to find out the true owner, that is why he is being liable, because he falls foul of explanation 2, which protects him. Rather, he falls under the part of the explanation 2 where the explanation says that he is guilty of an offense if he appropriates it to his own use when he knows or has the means of discovering the owner, or before he has used reasonable means to discover and gives notice to the owner, has kept the property a reasonable time to enable the owner to claim it. So basically, A is again becoming liable because he made no attempt to find the true owner. He immediately sold the ring. Alright. Since he immediately sold the ring, he would be liable under 403 for criminal misappropriation. Always remember that unlike in theft, in criminal misappropriation, the initial getting of property or the initial possession of the property is always innocent. It is only after initial possession that the accused has the capacity to have a mental frame to criminally misappropriate the object that he has in possession that belongs to someone else. Alright. So we have been talking about misappropriation and conversion. What the word misappropriate actually means? So let me tell you that misappropriate means to improperly setting apart for one's own use to the exclusion of owner. So it is an improper setting apart of the property which belongs to someone else to one's own use. Converts means to appropriate and deal with the property of another without right as if it's his own property. किसी की दूसरी की प्रॉपर्टी के साथ ऐसा व्यवहार करना, उससे ऐसे डील करना कि जैसे कि वो तुम्हारी ही प्रॉपर्टी है. Alright. So that is the true import of these two words, converts and misappropriate. You should understand one more thing, that accused is not guilty when he merely retains or possesses such property. He is guilty only when he appropriates or converts to his own use such property. His own use is very essential, and that must be coupled with dishonest intention. Okay? And of course you remember that property is a movable property. So remember, it is not just retention, but it is very essential that he appropriates or converts such property to his own use with dishonest intention. It is very essential for the applicability of section 403 of the IPC. You should always remember that what dishonestly means in IPC. It involves an element of wrongful gain and wrongful loss, or gaining wrongfully and losing wrongfully. Alright, that wrongful gain and wrongful loss is described under section 23. Dishonestly is described under section 24. So let me give you an illustration. Imagine there is a person who found a purse in the temple premises and there is a large gathering. He puts the purse in his own pocket but is immediately arrested, immediately at that very moment. Can he be said to be guilty of criminal misappropriation? The answer is no, for it cannot be assumed that mere act of picking up the purse and putting it in his pocket he intended to appropriate its content to his own use. Mere retention of the property would not warrant a conviction under section 403 of the IPC unless there is evidence that the accused used that property or appropriated or converted it to his own use. Alright, it is very essential. Similarly, you are also aware that misappropriation or conversion need not be permanent, it may be even for a temporary period. So imagine a situation where the accused person is a government servant and he has duty to receive certain money and pay it into treasury after making a receipt. Let us suppose he doesn't make a receipt and he actually misappropriates two of the sums. And he intends that I will later return the money to the government from my own salary. Can you say that he has committed criminal misappropriation? The answer is yes, he has. Now let us imagine a very different situation, a bit different, But the facts are the same, that the accused is a government servant. He has a duty to receive certain money and pay it into treasury on receipt. And he retains, let us suppose, two sums of money, never deposits it with the government, and he keeps that two sums of money in his possession for several months. And due to a fear of detection, he later, after 6 or 7 months, pays the amount in the treasury and makes a false entry in the books of account. Is he liable for criminal misappropriation? The answer is yes, because misappropriation and conversion need not be permanent, it may even be for temporary period of time. Now this position that I just mentioned to you would also apply on a servant who is authorized to collect money on behalf of his master. Alright. So the position would be the same for both of the cases. I have taken the example of a government servant, doesn't mean that it doesn't apply on the private entities as well. It applies both on private entities and government servant. If let us suppose in the case of private entity, an employer has actually employed a servant clerk or an employee in order to collect specific money for him, and the employer clerk or servant collects that money, but rather than giving it to employer, they misappropriate it, they would be liable under section 403. Now another essential thing that is important for criminal misappropriation that you can gather from explanation 2 is that property must actually belong to somebody. It must belong to somebody other than the accused. So for that, let me give an illustration. An idol is a juristic person, and let us suppose a bull is dedicated to an idol, and the bull, let us suppose, leaves the temple premises and is strayed. Then somebody, let us suppose he finds that bull and actually decides to misappropriate that bull and use the bull for his own purposes. Now here is a case of criminal misappropriation. Alright, because the bull actually belongs to the idol. Idol is a juristic entity. But a bull which is set at large in accordance with Hindu rites becomes res nullis. Sometimes there are some rituals where the bull has to be set at large. The bull is free and free to go anywhere he pleases, and he doesn't belong to anybody. That is res nullis. So in that situation, if a person actually finds the bull and appropriates the bull for his own use, then in that situation, that won't become the offense of criminal misappropriation. Then let me tell you the important point that that a finder, I gather it from explanation 2 only, that a finder must wait upon a reasonable time to allow the owner to claim the property before he appropriates it. Okay? The finder has to allow a reasonable time to allow the owner to claim the property before the finder appropriates that property. If the owner is not discovered, then under certain circumstances the finder may retain the property. But if he acts with reference to the article found in such a way that true owner may never be discovered, that it had been picked up by him, then he is attempting to create a situation where conversion of goods to his own use would be easy, and in such a case he would be guilty. Always remember that. Now I have given you sufficient instructions in the illustration itself, so this point of Ram Bharose versus state of Uttar Pradesh is rendered a bit redundant because I have already told you, but this is very important that you cite the case. It is the point that I have just mentioned is gathered from the case of Ram Bharose versus state of Uttar Pradesh, reported in 1952 AIR, Allahabad High Court, page number 481. Now let me tell you another position of law, that setting apart by one person for the use of some person other than himself and the true owner may amount to criminal misappropriation under 403 of the IPC as well. For this purpose, let me give you an illustration. It is of a case of Ram Dayal versus Emperor. It is a very old case of 1886. So just understand it through the means of illustration. In this case, a girl picked up a gold necklace and made it over to a sweeper girl. The brother of the finder falsely represented to the sweeper girl that the necklet belonged to a man of his acquaintance and the sweeper girl should return that necklace to him. And through this false representation, he got that necklet. So, in this case, the court held that he was guilty of criminal misappropriation. This case is an illustration that setting apart by one person for the use of some person other than himself and true owner may amount to criminal misappropriation as well. Because what did the accused represented before the sweeper girl? He said that the necklet belongs to someone else and that someone else is his acquaintance. On the basis of that false representation, the sweeper girl actually returned him the necklet, and after having that necklet, the accused appropriated that necklet for his own use. He was held liable for criminal misappropriation. Now the point is, what is the position of joint property and how can a person be liable under criminal misappropriation? So remember that a manager of a joint Hindu family, that is a karta, can only be liable to the charge of misappropriation under 403 if the division of the property has taken place and the share of each co-partner has been crystallized. Alright, it is only in this situation if he misappropriates the share of a co-partner which has been crystallized and the partition has happened and he still chooses to appropriate the share of a co-partner, then in those situations it may fall under the category of section 403. Alright. But when the division of property has not been affected at all and there is a joint property ownership and the partition has not been affected, in that situation the karta cannot be held liable for criminal misappropriation at all. Similar is the case of partner as well. A partner has an undefined ownership along with the other partners over the assets of the partnership. If let us suppose he chooses to use any property of the firm for his own purposes, then he may be rendered liable for a civil liability, but he is not liable for criminal misappropriation. This is a position of law that was held in Velji Raghavji versus State of Maharashtra, AIR 1965, Supreme Court, page number 433, and it has continued from then till now. Alright, and it is a very popular question that is asked in the context of partnership law, and especially in the cases of Delhi Judicial Service, you will often find this types of question. The point is very easy to understand. See, a partnership firm is not a legal entity, but a legal mode of doing business by all the partners. So until the firm is dissolved as per law and the accounts are settled, all the partners have dominion in common over the property and the funds of the firm. It is only after the settlement of the accounts and the allotment of the respective shares that the partners becomes owner of their share. Alright, as long as the firms continue and the firm is not dissolved, the partners are holding the property of the firm conjointly. No partner can say that this is my share or this is your share. It is only after the accounts and dissolution that the partners find that what shares are they entitled to. Alright, so always remember that since the partner has undefined ownership with the other partners over the assets of partnership, and if he chooses to use the assets of partnership for his own purpose, he is not liable to criminal misappropriation on that account alone. Now let me be very clear about one thing. In Velji Raghavji versus State of Maharashtra, Supreme Court also dealt with the point of criminal misappropriation. That point was taken before Supreme Court that can a partner be held liable for criminal misappropriation on the same facts that I just mentioned. Supreme Court said no, because once again the partners has undefined ownership with the other partners, then he can neither be held liable for criminal misappropriation, neither he can be held liable for criminal breach of trust. But Supreme Court put a word of caution as well. It said that we are not saying that a partner can never be held liable for criminal misappropriation or criminal breach of trust. Supreme Court said if there is a special contract which is made by the partners to the accused partner, and if that special contract mentions that he has to take care of a particular property and he's getting some sort of payment for that, and there is an existence of a special contract to that effect, then in that situation, and in that situation alone, he can be held liable for section 403 and section 405, that is criminal breach of trust of the IPC. Actually, in 405, the criminal breach of trust is defined. Criminal breach of trust is actually punished under 406 of the IPC. So he would most appropriately be liable under 403 and 406, because we always mentioned the sections in which offences are punishable, not in the offences in which sections are defined. So remember the general rule. The general rule is that a partner has an undefined ownership with all the other partners over the assets of partnership, and firm is not a legal entity but a legal mode of doing business. The firm का नाम होता है ना, it is a compendious name. जो जितने partners एक कंपेंडियस नेम दे देते हैं अपने आप को कि ये हम लोग साथ में काम कर रहे हैं, वी आर द पार्टनर्स, लेट अस सपोज AGB पार्टनर्स. तो व्हाट इज़ द नेम ऑफ द फॉर्म? इट इज़ अ कंपेंडियस नेम. ये लीगल एंटिटी अपने में नहीं होते, एक्सेप्ट इन द केस ऑफ लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप. वो थोड़ी अलग चीज़ है, ठीक है, उस पर नहीं जाते हैं अभी. पार्टनरशिप जनरल सेंस में समझते हैं. लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप के पास कुछ सेम्बलेंस होता है लीगल एंटिटी का, बट इन अ जनरल पार्टनरशिप लॉ द फर्म इज़ नॉट अ लीगल एंटिटी. सो आपको एग्जाम में जनरल पार्टनरशिप लॉ का आंसर देना है कि द फर्म इज़ नॉट अ लीगल एंटिटी बट अ लीगल मोड ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस बाय ऑल द पार्टनर्स until the firm is dissolved as per law and the accounts are settled. All partners have dominion in common over the property and the funds of the firm. It is only after settlement of the accounts and allotment of the respective shares that the partner becomes owner of his share. You should be very particular about this. Now let me give you a few illustrations of criminal misappropriation. Now take this case of Udhar versus State of Jharkhand, reported in AIR 2003, Supreme Court, page number 974. Now in this case, there was a main contractor who was paid a specific sum of money, and he never paid the subcontractor a part of share which he agreed to pay to the subcontractor. Now the question was, is the main contractor liable for criminal breach of trust? Supreme Court said no. Supreme Court said that where the principal or main contractor has received payment under a project but did not make the payment to subcontractor, then in that situation it amounts to a civil claim, but it never amounts to criminal misappropriation, because the contract between the main contractor and the principal is different, and the contract between the main contractor and subcontractor is different. So here is not a case of criminal misappropriation, but here is a case of civil liability. Alright, because the principal doesn't know about the subcontractor. The principal has only contracted to pay money to the main contractor, and now whatever does the main contractor does with that money is up to him. So Supreme Court said that the better remedy is actually applying for a civil suit, because the ingredients of section 403 of the IPC are not satisfied at all. Similarly, take another case. This is of Raza Hussain. It was reported in 904, volume number 25, Northern Wales Reporter, and page number 9. So in this case, there was this woman named B. She was an illiterate, and A was on railway platform. So B had a ticket from Allahabad to Delhi, and A had a ticket from Allahabad to Kanpur. B handed over her ticket to A in order to ascertain whether she had the right ticket. A, under the pretense of returning B's ticket, substituted his own ticket and kept B's ticket. In this case, A was held liable for criminal misappropriation and was sentenced accordingly. Now, a very interesting thing here is that he was not held liable for cheating. Alright, in this case, he was not held liable for cheating. But never mind, since it is an illustrative case, we are discussing it. So I think you should understand that why this is not a case of theft, because B herself handed over her ticket to A. That is why this is not a case of theft. Remember, in criminal misappropriation, the first possession of property is always innocent. It is not with dishonest intention. When A actually got her ticket, he formed an intention that since B's ticket is from Allahabad to Delhi, then he can make use of her ticket and travel from Allahabad to Delhi. So what he did, he exchanged his own ticket with the ticket of B, and he knew that B was illiterate. So that is why this is a case of criminal misappropriation. Similarly, let me tell you one more illustrative case. In this case, the accused purchased for 1 anna from a child aged 6 years 2 pieces of cloth valued at 15 anna, which the child had taken from the house of a third person. The accused was guilty of criminal misappropriation because he knew that the property belonged to the child's guardian, and he dishonestly appropriated the property for his own use. Now, I want you to understand one more point, that let us suppose we have a situation where the court passes a decree against a particular person. So that person in law is called judgment debtor. When the court passes a decree against you, then you would be called judgment debtor. So let us suppose you are the judgment debtor and you have to deliver a particular property to the court, and the court says that this property is attached under my authority and you cannot either sell it or make any use of it until our further orders. And let us suppose that the judgment debtor violates the order of attachment and actually sells that property. Then what would be the case there? That case would be punishable under criminal misappropriation as well. Alright. A similar case to that effect was reported in 1898, volume number 22, Madras High Court Cases, page number 151. Now, in this case, the judgment debtor was having his standing crops attached by an order of the court, and the court expressly made it clear that the crops will not be harvested and any use of them or sale of them will not be held until the court revokes the order of attachment. The judgment debtor violated the order of attachment and actually harvested the crops and sold them. The court held that he is guilty of criminal misappropriation. Now keep in mind that these are illustrative cases. These are just here to just give you an idea. See, criminal misappropriation is not a very big topic. It is a very small topic. So just get an idea about it. Mostly on criminal misappropriation in exam, you will get short notes, and it is very seldom. It is seldom that you get a very high marking question or a very nuanced question on section 403 of the IPC. It is very rarely that this things happen. Now we deal with section 404 of the IPC. Now that is an aggravated form of criminal misappropriation. It says dishonest misappropriation of property possessed by the deceased person at the time of his death. It says whoever dishonestly misappropriates or converts to his own use property knowing that such property was in possession of a deceased person at the time of that person's decease and has not since been in the possession of any person legally entitled to such possession shall be punished with imprisonment for either description of a term which may extend to 3 years and shall also be liable to fine, and if the offender at the time of such person's decease was employed by him as a clerk or servant, the imprisonment may extend to 7 years. So if the clerk and servant does the same act, then the imprisonment will extend to 7 years. उनके लिए aggravated form है. But a stranger is punished with maximum imprisonment of 3 years. Alright, the maximum imprisonment allowed to a stranger under section 404 is 3 years. But a person who is employed in the capacity of a clerk or servant, to him the imprisonment will extend to 7 years. Now look at the illustration. Z dies in the possession of furniture and money. His servant A, before money comes into possession of any person entitled to such possession, dishonestly misappropriates it. A has committed the offense defined in this section. Alright, so what has A done? A has actually misappropriated the property of a dead person, and before that property comes into the hands of a person who is lawfully entitled to that possession, he has misappropriated that property. Now this is the case of what? Criminal misappropriation. But that will be punishable not under 403. That would be punishable under 404, because you misappropriated the property of a dead person, hence you would be liable under 404. And since the person in this illustration was the servant of the deceased, then the sentence may extend to the maximum of 7 years. Alright, had it been a stranger, the sentence would be of maximum of 3 years. This illustration indicates that the section is intended to punish the servants and the strangers, and not the near relatives of the deceased. It should be kept in mind. 404 would only apply on strangers and the servants, but it doesn't apply to the near relatives of the deceased. It doesn't apply to the family members. Now, इस पे लोकस क्लासिकस है साथी प्रसाद वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ उत्तर प्रदेश. It was reported in AIR 1973 Supreme Court, page number 448. Now, in this case, what happened? In this case, there was a head constable who had taken away by force some ornaments from a boatman who had recovered these articles from a dead body of a drowned person, but instead of entering them in official records, he dishonestly kept them with himself and produced them only when confronted with the boatman. It was then held that he was liable for 404 of the IPC. He was also, in this case, was held liable for section 394 of the IPC, and he was also held liable for section 218 of the IPC. So let me just give you a bit detailed description of the facts. So what happened that there were a group of pilgrims who arrived in Ayodhya to take a dip in Saryu River. Two Srivastav brothers were there. They drowned. One of them had several gold ornaments in his body. So the boatman actually recovered the dead bodies and actually kept those ornaments with himself so that he can give it to the lawful authorities. Now, when the information reached the police station, the police party arrived there. The constable in this case, what he did, the head constable in this case, actually slapped the boatman, and he said that don't tell anyone about this, that you have recovered these gold ornaments. And then he took those ornaments with him. There were ornaments there was wristwatch, several other things were there. Now, the head constable appropriated that property to his own use. Eventually, the information reached to the superior police officers, such as IG, and they actually made the boatman confront the constable, the head constable, in their presence, in the presence of the superior officer. Now, the accused person was really afraid. So, he said that I took the property for a short while and I intended to give the information to the police station. The superior police officer said that if you intended to give us this information, why didn't you made an official entry in the police diary? Why never you informed your superior or the SHO or the superintendent of police about the seizure that you have made? These instances are giving us an indication that you want to misappropriate this property for your own benefit. So he was held liable under 404 because the property that he was misappropriating was a property that belonged to a dead person. Alright, that property belonged to a dead person. So he was held liable for that. But why was he held liable for section 394 of the IPC? That is robbery by voluntary causing hurt. It is because he took those articles from the boatman by slapping him. So the condition of hurt was satisfied. So he was also held liable for section 394. And since he never made any entries, he was also held liable for punishment under section 218 of the IPC. That is, public servant framing incorrect record or writing with an intent to save a person from punishment or property from forfeiture. So section 218 says that whoever being a public servant and being as a public servant charged with the preparation of any record or other writing frames that record or writing in a manner which he knows to be incorrect with intent to cause or knowing it to be likely to cause that he will thereby cause loss or injury to the public or to any person, or with intent thereby to save or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby save any person from legal punishment, or with intent to save or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby save any property from forfeiture or other charge to which is liable by law, he shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, and or with fine or with both. तो इनको पनिशमेंट 218 का भी इसलिए हुआ था क्योंकि इन्होंने फॉल्स एंट्री तो बनाई थी, और ख़ास तौर से उन्होंने जो ऑर्नामेंट रिकवर किए थे उसकी कोई ऑफिशियल एंट्री पुलिस रिकॉर्ड्स में नहीं रखी. सो सीजर मेमो कोई था नहीं, ना इन्फॉर्मेशन, ना इन्होंने पुलिस डायरी में कुछ रिकॉर्ड किया. एंड सिंस देयर वाज नो ऑफिशियल एंट्री ऑफ such articles that this head constable seized, he was also held liable for section 218 of the IPC. Now we come to another important point, which is the most popular question asked in judicial exams, mains. That is, what is the difference between theft and criminal misappropriation? Now always remember, you will be faced with this question all the time. Now theft, you need to understand that in case of theft, the object of the offender is to take the property from other person's possession, and the offense is complete as soon as the offender has moved the property dishonestly. Okay. In the case of criminal misappropriation, the offender is already in the possession of the property, his first possession is innocent, and hence his mere possession of the property is not punishable because he has lawfully obtained it, or because he has found it, or he is a joint owner, or he has the property under some mistaken notion and he intends to return the property to the true owner. So remember, the first possession is never punished, while in the case of theft, the first possession itself is made punishable. Secondly, you need to keep in mind that under theft, the first moving of the property is with the dishonest intention, and in criminal misappropriation, the subsequent dishonest intention is made punishable. Alright, it is the dishonest intention being formed after having the possession of the property and its subsequent appropriation and conversion in pursuance of that intention, that is made punishable. Another difference is that theft simpliciter is punishable by 3 years maximum, while dishonest misappropriation simpliciter is punishable by 2 years maximum. Alright. And finally, theft is a cognizable offense, while criminal misappropriation is a non-cognizable offense. इसका मतलब थेफ्ट में FIR हो सकती है, और क्रिमिनल मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन में आपको मैजिस्ट्रेट से कंप्लेन करनी पड़ेगी. एक और आप इसमें डिफरेंस बना सकते हैं कि थेफ्ट इज़ डिफाइंड अंडर 378 एंड criminal misappropriation is defined under 403. बट पर्सनली आई डू नॉट लाइक दिस डिफरेंस. ये किस तरीके का डिफरेंस होता है कि तुम बी ब्लॉक में रहते हो और मैं सी ब्लॉक में रहता हूँ, तो दिस इज़ अ डिफरेंस. ऑलराइट, तो ये बड़ा वीक तरीके का होता है, बट एग्ज़ाम में काम कर जाता है. आप एग्ज़ाम में ज़रूर लिखिएगा. बट पर्सनली आई डू नॉट लाइक टू फ्रेम सच काइंड ऑफ डिफरेंस दैट this definition is under this section and this definition is under this other section. This is not a very big difference in IPC, ठीक है, but it works in exam, so you can always write that. ध्यान ना रहे तो ये ध्यान रखिएगा कि theft is defined under 378, criminal misappropriation is defined under section 403 of the IPC. Now, since we are primarily done with it, let me give you a bit more illustrations on 403 of the IPC. And illustrations I'll be giving in the form of questions so that you can grasp the entire essence of 403. So let us suppose there is Mr. X. He finds a briefcase at a railway station, and after that he tries very hard to find the owner, and he brings the briefcase in his own house. And after that, when he opens the briefcase, he finds that there are 50,000 rupees of cash deposited within it. He then notifies that there is a lost briefcase with 50,000 cash within it in the lost and found column, and publishes that information in all the English and Hindi dailies of the city, asking the owner of the lost briefcase to collect it from Mr. X. Mr. X waits about a period of 1 month, and he gets no reply. And after waiting about for a period of 1 month, Mr. X utilizes that money for his own use. Then let us suppose after a period of 2-3 months, the real owner comes in, he prosecutes Mr. X for 403. Now in this situation, is there a case of criminal misappropriation or not? Now think about it. Think about this entire scenario. Think about applying the ingredients of law. He gave a notice, he reasonably tried to find the true owner, he waited for a reasonable time, and he got no reply from the true owner. So here dishonest intention is not there. Dishonest intention is lacking. So Mr. X would not be liable for misappropriating the money in this case. Now let me change this entire position once again. Now let us suppose that in these very facts, I'll reiterate the facts again just in case you don't get confused. If Mr. X finds a briefcase which has 50,000 rupees contained in it, he gives a notice in lost and found column of English dailies and Hindi dailies in the city, and says that the true owner can come and collect the briefcase. Now let us suppose in these very facts a person named M arrives. Alright, a person named M arrives and says that this is my briefcase. Alright, now M has actually lost a briefcase with the same amount. M has actually lost a briefcase with the same amount, and M in good faith believes that this briefcase that Mr. X is notified in the lost and found column actually belongs to him. So in this case, if M arrives, takes the briefcase from Mr. X, and then goes home, and then actually finds that the briefcase does not belong to him at all, Mr. M is now confirmed after opening the briefcase in his own home that the briefcase does not belong to him, but he has taken the briefcase from Mr. X by representing that it actually belonged to him. So let us suppose that initially Mr. M was in good faith believing that the briefcase actually belonged to him, but after going back to his home, he opened the briefcase and found that the briefcase does not belong to him, and then he decides to misappropriate the money contained in the briefcase. Then can it be held that he is liable for criminal misappropriation? The answer is yes. In this case, M would be liable for criminal misappropriation, because the dishonest intention happened when he found out that he was not the true owner of it. He yet retained and decided to appropriate the money for his own use, rather than returning the briefcase back to X and saying that this is not my money and this is not my briefcase. Alright, so the situation has taken a sharp turn here. In this case, Mr. M will be liable for 403 IPC. Now let me give you another illustration. Mr. A sees B drop his purse on the road. The purse contains 7,000 rupees. Alright. Now Mr. A initially takes the purse and wants to return the money and the purse to B. But he immediately remembers one thing, that day is his wife's anniversary and he urgently needs to buy a gift for her. So he thinks that I will first buy some gifts for my wife with the money that belongs to B, and later, after the anniversary is over and after everything is over, and after a week, I will return the purse to Mr. A. I will return the money to Mr. B. That is the position in A's mind. So what A does, he takes the purse, he uses the money which belongs to B, and actually buys the gift for his wife, and then he waits a week, puts back the 7,000 rupees in the purse and returns the money to B along with the purse. Is this a case of criminal misappropriation? The answer is yes. This is a case of criminal misappropriation. Because first of all, A knew that he is not the true owner of the property. He knew who the true owner was. And yet, after knowing that, he dishonestly misappropriated the money and converted it for his own use. Alright, which in this instance is buying gifts for his wife. So the ingredients of section 403 are satisfied and he would be liable. Now it doesn't matter that after a while he returned the money and he borrowed the money and misappropriated the money for temporary period, because you know that explanation 1 implies that misappropriation need not be permanent. It can even be temporary and a person would still be liable under section 403 of the IPC. Alright, I think this should be very clear. I must tell you one more point, that misappropriation of a Stridhan that belongs to the wife by the husband is also punishable under 403. Alright, अगर husband wife का Stridhan misappropriate कर दे, then in that case he'll be liable for 403. अब जब भी श्रीधन का एलिगेशन लगता है तो उसके साथ 403, 405 और कभी कभी थेफ्ट भी शामिल होता है. ऑलराइट, और डाउरी प्रोहिबिशन एक्ट तो शामिल होता ही है. सो ऑलवेज रिमेंबर दैट द लॉ एक्ट्स इन अ सीरीज. ठीक है, कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होता एक सिंगल ऑफेंस है, कई ऑफेंस एक साथ जुड़े होते हैं. सो वन क्राइम may lead to another crime and that crime may lead to another crime, and it could happen that a single transaction is satisfying the multiple ingredients of the offenses. ठीक है, and sometimes the prosecution is unsure as to what facts can be proved in a given case. So it actually wants that the charges of all the facts that can or might be proved in a case should be included. So that is why you often find that in the case of Sridhan there is also an allegation of theft, misappropriation and criminal breach of trust. Alright. Now the next point that I am about to tell you is quite technical and quite advanced, and it is in relation to CRPC. Now there is a section in CRPC, that is section 222, and it empowers the court that when a person is charged with an offence which consists of several particulars and a combination of some only of which constitute a complete minor offence, and such combination is proved but remaining particulars are not proved, then the court may convict the person with such minor offence although he was not charged with it. So in essence, कि imagine that there is a major charge but the major charge is not proved, वो साबित नहीं हो पाया, बट मेजर चार्ज के कई इंग्रेडिएंट्स ऐसे हैं जो अपने कॉम्बिनेशन में एक माइनर ऑफेंस बनाते हैं, वो माइनर इंग्रेडिएंट्स प्रूव हो जाते हैं. तो क्या कोर्ट उस माइनर ऑफेंस के लिए कन्वर्ट कर सकता है? तो सेक्शन 222 ऑफ द CRPC कहता है कि हाँ वो कर सकता है. तो अब सवाल ये आता है कि अगर मान लीजिए ओरिजिनल चार्ज है क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट का और क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट का चार्ज प्रूव नहीं हो पाया पर क्रिमिनल मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन का चार्ज प्रूव हो गया. So is criminal misappropriation a minor offense under 406? इसका आंसर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दिया है हाँ, and it is the position of law that has been held by many high courts. ठीक है, तो आप ये CRPC का पॉइंट है, that is why I don't want to elaborate upon it in great detail because otherwise IPC batch will get quite confused that what is it all about. But those who belong to CRPC batch will be very aware of this position that if the species of offense belongs to the same genus, then it might be termed as a minor offense if its ingredients are the same with the major offense in some degree or more. So the point that you need to remember is, for the IPC and the CRPC batch both, that if the charge is under criminal breach of trust and the conviction is under 403 while the charge was not there for 403 at all, then that is permissible by law. violate the provision of section 222 of the CRPC. Now next we'll read about criminal breach of trust. I'll just read the Bail Act provision, and tomorrow we'll deal with the nuances, but for today we'll finish the Bail Act. Section 405 says that whoever being in any manner entrusted with property, mark this word, entrusted with property, very important, or with any dominion over property, dishonestly misappropriates or converts to his own use that property. Now you need to mark the word dominion as well. Alright, mark the word dominion, and then the ingredients are a bit similar to criminal misappropriation. Dishonestly misappropriates or converts to his own use that property. अब देखिए यहाँ पे मूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी नहीं लिखा है, यहाँ पे दैट प्रॉपर्टी लिखा है. इसका क्या मतलब है? क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी को भी लेके हो सकता है और मूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी को भी लेके हो सकता है. देन गोइंग फर्दर, dishonestly uses or disposes that property in violation of any direction of law. Mark the words direction of law. Prescribing the mode in which the trust is to be discharged, or any legal contract expressed or employed. Mark the word legal contract, which he has made touching the discharge of such trust, or willfully suffers any other person so to do, commits criminal breach of trust. Now the next element that is very important that you need to mark is willfully suffers. Now let me read the explanation 1. A person being an employer of an establishment, whether exempted under section 17 of the Employees Provident Funds Act miscellaneous provision 1952 or not, who deducts the employee's contribution from wages payable to the employee for credit to a provident fund or family pension fund established by any law for the time being in force, shall be deemed to have been entrusted with the amount of the contribution so deducted by him, and if he makes default in the payment of such contribution to the said fund in violation of said law, he shall be deemed to have dishonestly used the amount of the said contribution in violation of the direction of law. तो explanation 1 किस बात को लेके है? डायरेक्शन ऑफ लॉ को एक्सप्लेन कर रही है, जहाँ पे एम्प्लॉयज़ प्रोविडेंट फंड से वो रिलेटेड है, जहाँ पे एम्प्लॉय जो एक अमाउंट डिडक्ट करता है फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ फैमिली वेलफेयर फंड और प्रोविडेंट फंड और फैमिली पेंशन फंड, और उस फंड को जो वो एम्प्लॉयज़ के सैलरी से डिडक्ट कर रहा है उसको वो वहाँ पे जमा नहीं करता है उस फंड में जो क्रिएटेड है एक्ट के अंदर, देन ही वुड बी सेड टू बी liable for criminal breach of trust because he has dishonestly misappropriated that amount in the violation of the direction of law that is prescribed by the statute. Then we come to explanation 2. It says that a person being an employer who deducts the employee's contribution from the wages payable to the employee for credit to the employee's state insurance funds or employee's state insurance corporation, अभी इंश्योरेंस से रिलेटेड explanation 2. देन मेन इसके पार्ट पे आते हैं. देन he shall be deemed to have been entrusted with the amount of such contribution so deducted by him, and if he makes default in the payment of the contribution to the said fund in the violation of the said act, then he shall be deemed to have dishonestly used the amount of such contribution in the violation of the direction of law. तो explanation 2 ये एम्प्लॉयज़ के वेलफेयर और इंश्योरेंस को लेके है, ठीक है. explanation 2 is for employees state insurance fund. So you can understand कि explanation का import सिर्फ यहीं तक नहीं है, it goes a bit wider than that. So if employees are actually submitting a specific sum to their employer for family welfare fund or for insurance fund or for pension fund, and the employer, rather than putting that money in that fund or whatever amount he was deducting from their employee's salary in order to be deposited in the funds that I just mentioned, and rather than putting in that fund, the employer decides to appropriate that money for his own use, then he would be liable for criminal misappropriation. He would be liable for criminal breach of trust. Then we come to illustrations. Now tomorrow we will deal with all the nuances of criminal breach of trust. Right now all we need to do is deal with the illustrations and the Bayer Act for today. Now, illustration A says, A, being an executor of will of the deceased person, dishonestly disobeys the law which directs him to divide the effects according to the will and appropriates them to his own use. A has committed criminal breach of trust. एक बात का ध्यान रखिएगा, इलस्ट्रेशन याद करके रखिएगा, मतलब लाइन बाय लाइन याद नहीं करने हैं, आपको ध्यान रखना है कि कौन सा इलस्ट्रेशन किस सेक्शन से रिलेट करता है, क्योंकि प्रीलिम्स में एज इट इज़ आ जाता है और मेंस में भी एज इट इज़ आ जाता है. कहते हैं ये इलस्ट्रेशन दे देंगे और आपसे पूछेंगे कि इसमें क्या होना चाहिए. खासतौर से यूपी, यूके, बिहार, एमपी, इन स्टेट्स की बात कर रहा हूँ. सो वी कम टू नेक्स्ट ऑन इलस्ट्रेशन बी. A is a warehouse keeper. Z, going on a journey, entrusts his furniture to A under a contract that it shall be returned on payment of a stipulated sum for warehouse room. A dishonestly sells the good. A has committed criminal breach of trust. ठीक है, वेयर को उसने कुछ अपना फर्नीचर जमा करने के लिए रखा, फीस दी उसको, और जो वेयर हाउस कीपर था उसने वो फर्नीचर बेच दिया. क्या होगा यहाँ पे? क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट है. ठीक है. देन वी कम टू इलस्ट्रेशन सी. ए रिसाइडिंग इन कैलकाटा इज एन एजेंट ऑफ जी रिसाइडिंग एट दिल्ली. So there is an express or implied contract between A and Z that all sums remitted by Z to A shall be invested by A according to Z's direction. Z remits ₹1,00,000 of rupees to A with the directions to A to invest the same in company's paper. A dishonestly disobeys the direction and employs the money in his own business. A has committed criminal breach of trust. But if A, in the last illustration, not dishonestly but in good faith, believing that it would be more advantageous to Z to hold shares in Bank of Bengal, disobeys Z's direction and buys shares in Bank of Bengal for Z instead of buying company's paper, then though Z should suffer loss and should be entitled to bring a civil action against A on account of that loss, yet A, not having acted dishonestly, has not committed criminal breach of trust. It should be very clear. Dishonest intention lack हुआ तो क्या चला गया? कौन सा एलिमेंट चला गया? पूरा रिगर चला गया क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट का. ऑलवेज रिमेंबर, ऑफेंसेस अगेंस्ट प्रॉपर्टी में ना डिसऑनेस्ट इंटेंशन इज द रूट. इट इज़ अ साइन qua non. It is very essential condition that has to be satisfied in all of the cases. Otherwise, you cannot prove any offense of offenses against property. You will never be able to prove any offenses if you are, as a prosecution, unable to show that a particular accused acted with a dishonest intention. Always remember, for offenses against the property, you will always find dishonest intention at its root. Now we come to illustration E. A revenue officer is entrusted with public money and is either directed by law or bound by a contract express or implied with the government to pay into a certain treasury all the public money which he holds. A dishonestly appropriates the money. A has committed criminal breach of trust. Now we come to illustration F. A carrier, is entrusted with the property to be carried by land or by water. A dishonestly misappropriates the property. A has committed criminal breach of trust. आपको एक चीज़ देखनी होगी, ध्यान रखना होगा. अब जितने भी इलस्ट्रेशन आपने अभी पढ़े, इनमें आपको एक चीज़ पता होगी कि इनके पास किसी ना किसी तरीके से कोई भी प्रॉपर्टी इंट्रस्ट की गई है. ऑल राइट, द प्रॉपर्टी हैज़ बीन इंट्रस्टेड टू देम फर्स्ट. या तो इंट्रस्टेड है या उनके पास उस प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर डोमिनियन है. ये दोनों ही चीज़ें हैं, आपको सारे इलस्ट्रेशन में मिल जाएंगी. चाहे आप इलस्ट्रेशन ए ले लीजिए, चाहे आप इलस्ट्रेशन बी ले लीजिए, चाहे आप एफ ले लीजिए. तो यहाँ पे दोनों कंडीशन ये वाली सेटिस्फाइड हैं. फिर एसेंस में ये आता है कि डिसऑनेस्ट इंटेंशन के साथ मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन हुआ है. ठीक है, तब जाके ही अ पर्सन इज लायबल फॉर क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट. एक बात याद रखिएगा, ये जो वर्ड है ना इंट्रस्टमेंट, इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एज वेल इन ऑर्डर फॉर क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट टू अप्लाई. बिकॉज unless there is an entrustment, there can be no offense under criminal breach of trust. इंट्रस्टमेंट क्या होता है? अगर मान लीजिए मैं अपनी प्रॉपर्टी आपको देता हूँ कि आप अपने घर पे रख लीजिएगा सेफली, तो मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? मैं अपनी प्रॉपर्टी इंटरेस्ट कर रहा हूँ आपके ऊपर, आपके पास, ठीक है? आई एम इंटरेस्टिंग माई प्रॉपर्टी टू यू, एंड व्हेन आई इंटरेस्ट माई प्रॉपर्टी टू यू, देन व्हाट वुड यू हैव ओवर दैट प्रॉपर्टी? For that temporary period, till the time I've entrusted you that property, you have the dominion over that property. All right. So remember that the very basic ingredient and the very basic requirement to prove the offenses under 405 is first entrustment or dominion. That has to be proved, and entrustment is very essential. And then you have to prove that whether the accused was actuated by dishonest intention or not, and misappropriated it or converted to his own use by the use of such dishonest intention. That has to be proved as well. These are the twin conditions that you need to satisfy. अब उसमें और भी चीज़ आ जाती हैं कि आप एज अ प्रोसिक्यूशन एलेज करते हैं कि अक्यूज्ड ने जिसको प्रॉपर्टी इंटरेस्ट की गई थी, ही एक्टेड डिसऑनेस्टली, या उसने अपने पर्पस के लिए मिसअप्रोप्रिएट कर लिया, या उसने कोई लॉ के डायरेक्शन का वायलेशन किया जो बताता था उस प्रॉपर्टी को कैसे यूज़ में लाना है, या किसी लीगल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का वायलेशन किया जो अक्यूज्ड और कंप्लेनेंट के बीच में था. लेकिन ऑल इन ऑल जो पहला कंडीशन जो सेटिस्फाई करने की ज़रूरत होगी, जो फर्स्ट कंडीशन जो सेटिस्फाई करने की ज़रूरत होगी, वो होगी इंट्रस्टमेंट. अगर ये नहीं सेटिस्फाई हुआ तो बाकी के इंग्रेडिएंट्स भूल जाइए. इट इज़ वेरी एसेंशियल दैट यू सेटिस्फाई इंट्रस्टमेंट. इट इज़ वेरी एसेंशियल. So I think today I shouldn't elaborate more upon criminal breach of trust, because I should give you time to absorb the entire information relating to criminal misappropriation. So I would want you to actually read about criminal breach of trust in the Bayer Act. Okay? Tomorrow we will deal with all the case laws and the nuances that relates to criminal breach of trust. Alright, that is it for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.